Before the brains there was soup, which Wanda had cooked with vegetable oil, and Vasilisa had risen from table in a bad temper with the unpleasant feeling of having eaten nothing at all. That evening he had innumerable things to do, all of them difficult and unpleasant. The dining room table had been turned upside down and a bundle of levied Yurchik's money was lying on the floor. "You are a fool," Vasilisa said to his wife. Wanda turned on him and she answered, "I've always known you were a despicable beast, but lately you've been outdoing yourself." Vasilisa felt an agonizing desire to fetch her a swinging blow across the face that would knock her over and make her hit her head on the edge of the sideboard. And then again and again until that damned, bony creature shut up and admitted she was beaten. He, Vasilisa, was worn out, he worked like a slave, and he felt he had a right to demand that she obey him at home. Vasilisa gritted his teeth and restrained himself. Attacking Wanda was a rather more dangerous undertaking than one might think. "Just do as I say," said Vasilisa through clenched teeth. "Don't you see, they may move the sideboard and what then?" "But they'd never think of looking under the table. Everybody in town does it." Wanda gave in to him and they set to work together, pinning banknotes to the underside of the table with thumbtacks. Soon the whole underside of the table was covered with a multicolored pattern like a well-designed silk carpet. Grunting, his face covered in sweat, Vasilisa stood up and glanced over the expanse of paper money. "It's going to be so inconvenient," said Wanda. "Every time I want some money I shall have to turn the dining room table over." "So what, it won't kill you," replied Vasilisa hoarsely. "Better to have to turn the table over than lose everything." "Have you heard what's going on in the city?" "They're worse than the Bolsheviks. They're searching houses indiscriminately, looking for officers who fought against them." At 11 o'clock Wanda carried the samovar from the kitchen into the dining room and put out the lights everywhere else in the apartment. She produced a bag of stale bread and a lump of green cheese from the sideboard. The single lamp hanging over the table from one socket of a triple chandelier shed a dim reddish light from its semi-incandescent filament. Vasilisa chewed a piece of bread roll and green cheese, which was so unpleasant that it made his eyes water as if he had a raging toothache. At every bite fine crumbs of the sickening stuff spattered his jacket and his tie. Uneasy, though not knowing quite why, Vasilisa glared at Wanda as she chewed. "I'm amazed how easily they get away with it," said Wanda, glancing upwards towards the turbans. "I was certain that one of them had been killed." But no, they're all back, and now the apartment is full of officers again. At any other time Wanda's remarks would not have made the slightest impression on Vasilisa, but now, when he was tortured by fear and unease, he found them intolerably spiteful. "I'm surprised at you," he replied, glancing away to avoid the irritation of looking at her. "You know perfectly well that really they were doing the right thing." "Somebody had to defend the city against those," Vasilisa lowered his voice, "swine." "Besides, you're wrong if you think they got off lightly. I think he's been." Wanda looked thoughtful and nodded. "Yes, I thought so too when I went up there." "You're right, he's been wounded." "Well, then, it's nothing to be pleased about. Got away with it, indeed." Wanda licked her lips. "I'm not pleased, I only say they seem to have got away with it because what I want to know is, when Petley or his men come to you, which God forbid, and ask you, as chairman of the House Committee, who are the people upstairs, what are you going to say? Were they in the Hetman's army, or what?" Vasilisa scowled. "I can say with absolute truth that he's a doctor. After all, there's no reason why I should know anything else about him." "How could I?" "That's the point. In your position you're supposed to know." At that moment the doorbell rang. Vasilisa turned pale, and Wanda turned her scrawny neck. His nose twitching, Vasilisa stood up and said, "Do you know what? Maybe I'd better run straight up to the turbans and call them." Before Wanda had time to reply the bell rang again. "Oh my God," said Vasilisa anxiously. "Nothing for it, I shall have to go." Terrified, Wanda followed him. They opened their front door into the communal hallway, which smelled of the cold. Wanda's angular face, eyes wide with fear, peeped out. Above her head the electric bell gave another importunate ring. For a moment the idea crossed Vasilisa's mind of knocking on the turban's glass door. Someone would be bound to come down and things might not be so terrible. but he was afraid to do it. Suppose the intruders were to ask him, "Why did you knock? Afraid of something? Guilty conscience?" Then came the hopeful thought, though a faint one, that it might not be a search party but perhaps someone else.